This started through a relationship that I developed with Siemens Corporation and Ron Haxton. And, Ron and I are friends. We actually had a project that we were going to do in Mexico that fell through. And Ron basically said, you can keep the money, Chuck, but you've got to figure out what you're going to do next. And so I wanted to do a global engineering kind of project. So it started with a relationship between me and Ron, and then we looked around to find something that would work with, in the context of something that was interesting for Siemens because they're the funding partner, and something that would actually make a difference and would educate students. Got hooked up with Tom Byers, who, like I said, was in international programs, now is in the Ag College, and he had these strong relationships with Tenggol Kalikasan in the Philippines. And he said, look, these are good people, go with it. And basically, they have these issues that you might be able to make an impact on with an engineering perspective. And so based on the strength of Tom's relationship with me and Ron's relationship with me, we moved forward. I have a background in environmental activism. I was a key person involved with the campaign to take out the dams on the Lower Snake, and also save the last remaining roadless areas in the national forest. So I have an environmental background. But my interest now is mostly in how do we stop these, how do we really improve our whole global engineering thing. I was also very interesting about scaling up this kind of effort, because I know that they told me the size of the numbers. It was like 20 hectares of mangroves. Well, 20 hectares of mangroves is not going to save the Philippines. It's not going to prevent typhoons. In fact, it's just a drop in the bucket. Sooner or later, somebody has to work on the problem of how do we scale this up. And one of the things that we do as engineers is think about worker productivity. And so there was a core idea behind what we did. It was, okay, we're going to go over there. We can't scale this up on a government level. We're only over there for 4 or 5 days. But we might be able to make a difference if we figure out how to make the workers more productive. So if the other things kind of come in alignment, then we can make a huge difference. Here we have a little test, a laboratory essentially, where we're going to go into a different culture with, friendly, nice people, but we don't really know how well we're going to be able to collaborate with them. And then the other thing is that lots of times we don't even know what we don't know. We're not even really aware of the lessons that we need to learn. And the only way that you can become aware of those lessons is to go and do. And then you go, oh my goodness, I didn't know about that. That's metacognition. Knowing your unknowns and then not knowing what the other unknowns might be, but then trying to be receptive to learning about them. And then what I found was the biggest challenge was what I call hierarchical navigation. And what I mean by that is basically you have a hierarchy over there in the Philippines, and we have a hierarchy here. And with me and the student groups, I'm at the top of the hierarchy. I'm the professor, and the students are my minions, okay? And once again, the natural tendency, even in the university, I had to fight to, I spent 3 weeks fighting to basically pull this project off because, the administration was unreceptive to the idea that I would actually pay the way of taking 6 students over to the Philippines, especially undergraduates. I mean, it's one thing to take graduate students to a conference, but it's an absolute another thing to take undergraduates on a field project. It's just unheard of. People just don't do it. And so, I had to navigate my hierarchy here, and then when I got over there, I saw that there was also a hierarchy, pleasant hierarchy, nice people, just that's what the social structure is. And we had to figure out how to get the students who have the need for the information to talk to the people who have the problem. I mean, one of the most revealing moments that we had was when we were out there planting mangroves, and one of the women who were a member of the women's group who was actually doing the planting was describing a device that she thought would be the perfect mangrove planting tool. And that device sounded very, very much like a post hole digger. So here you have this woman in the Philippines who has a smartphone and who basically lives in many ways a first world existence, but she at the same time has keyholes in her knowledge about even simple tools like post hole diggers. And so finding the way to get that information, maybe the best thing we can do is ship them 500 postal diggers. Maybe that's the best use of money if we actually want to fix a problem. So navigating those hierarchies, the thing I learned for myself was that it was very easy for me to step into a situation and talk to whoever I wanted to, because that's what I do for a living. And what I realized after about the second day was that was really inhibiting the students' learning. And so I just stepped away and started taking pictures. And then the students became engaged. And so, you know, if I had to do this again, I would step away day one. These problems of hierarchical navigation are not just limited to NGO work. You know, many of the projects, many of the corporate sponsors that I have in the clinic have these same kinds of issues between people in Seattle and people in a factory overseas. Getting the right information to the right people overseas is a key thing, and learning how that can go wrong in an NGO environment can be a really good path, because you know, if in the end we can't make much difference, nobody's really mad, we tried, you know, but when millions of dollars are at stake, people really do have to get the right information. Now, that doesn't mean that the work that we're trying to do with the mangroves is not important. It is, and we want to make a difference. At the same time, it's a good training ground, you know. In the end, if we learn how to deal with the mayor of one of the little towns that was on the beach in Dossel Bay, those same skills are useful for dealing with a plant manager in Shenzhen, China, because it's not that the cultures are the same, but the relational modes are the same. And that's why this kind of stuff can actually be really, really good and cost effective for companies like Siemens to fund, to train people, because you get some experience in this environment, you learn how to deal with life in Manila, you travel internationally, you make phone calls. Those kinds of base level syntactic skills are absolutely key for success in global engineering. The students actually bring a lot. I mean, they have lots and lots of different thought processes. They come from their own background. You know, one of the things that I've told the video crew is, you know, you guys are familiar with your modes of communication. You know, I'm not exactly out of the loop like a lot of people my age. I do pay attention. You know, I read blogs and Twitter feeds and on and on. But once again, you guys have a different set of fresh eyes, and you also, one of the key things in the age group is that you have a profound ability for divergent thinking, because you're not locked in stone yet. And I like to think that I'm still a pretty good divergent thinker, but I can see myself ossifying. I'm 48 years old. I know that I'm getting older, and I know that I have, my expectations are becoming more rigid. You know, I have to practice to be a divergent thinker, whereas it comes very, very naturally for students. And so they come up with solutions that I couldn't think of. What that makes me do is realize that my biggest job is to step back and create an environment that the students can then feed off of and practice that divergent thinking in a positive and progressive way, and putting some boundaries on that as part of what I do. But it's really really important, because students fundamentally don't have any knowledge when they start these things. I mean, everything in the world is what we call just-in-time learning, and so by putting them, you know, when the students started this project, they didn't know anything about mangroves. You know, I would suspect that they would have a difficult time finding the Philippines on the map. You know, but by the end of the project, I think that they actually, you know, besides learning a lot, they contributed some, and you know, they hopefully took one step closer to being that global citizen that I think that we need, and a global engineer. I think time will tell. You know, I mean, I think that, you know, some of the testing that the students have just finished up, you know, we'll see if some of their ideas were successful. You know, it's not just coming up with a better mousetrap. In the end, the people in the Philippines have to take those better mousetraps and decide that they're going to actually do something with them. You know, you can't approach these problems with the idea that there's no ambiguity, and that you can't just wave your magic wand and get everything fixed overnight. Fixing the mangroves in the Philippines is you know, if we had all the money we wanted, would be a 5 to 10 year prospect, which is longer than any student's tenure in my design clinic, which is only 4 months. You know, that said, if we have the appropriate humility, we can carve out those little spots where people can really make a difference, and, you know, and do it.